Welcome, everyone, to Turkish series Stars, your corner of heartfelt stories, whispered truths, and the kind of conversation that keeps you thinking long after the screen dims. If you haven't subscribed yet, take a quick moment to do so, and if you'd like to support the channel, the join button awaits. As always, remember this is a dramatized, commentary-style retelling inspired by public personas and fandom chatter, created for entertainment. Nothing here claims to be a definitive fact, and everyone is treated with respect. Tonight's tale has left the entertainment world buzzing, a revelation that seemed impossible until it wasn't, a buried chapter that refused to stay closed. We're stepping into the moment when Barış Arduç, steady and composed in public as ever, decided to let down his guard and speak from a place he rarely reveals. That choice, made beneath the bright lights of a live talk show, sent ripples through the industry and pulled Elçin, along with the man she was publicly linked to at the time, back into a storm neither of them asked for. It began like any other morning in Istanbul's glitter-soaked rumor mill, where headlines dance and vanish by noon. But then came a single interview segment that turned everything upside down. Sitting across from a seasoned host, Barış set aside his usual precision with words and let something raw slip through. This wasn't a casual remark. It was the spark that reignited a love story people thought belonged to the past, and it brought Elçin into the center of it all, without her even saying a word. We know Barış for his restraint, his preference for understatement over spectacle. But that morning, the calm cracked. With a measured breath, he admitted that at a time when the world believed Elçin was officially seeing a powerful, well-connected businessman, something far more private was unfolding between them. He didn't rush, didn't dramatize, didn't point fingers. He simply allowed himself to be plain. He said that while the world saw official photos and public dinners, he and Elçin met between the margins. They sent messages when cameras were nowhere near. They stole moments when no one looked twice. And yes, it carried risk. He described it as a quiet current that neither of them had planned, a pull that kept drawing them back. Those words, simple, careful, heavy, landed like fireworks across every screen. Years of speculation reassembled themselves in minutes. Not because he had bragged, but because he finally spoke from a place that sounded like an old ache he couldn't pretend away. The tremor in his voice carried the memory of afternoons that never made it to social media, goodbyes that weren't meant to be final, emotions they tried to file under almost. For the first time, it felt like he wasn't performing a role. He was revisiting the doorway of a story he had never fully stepped through. Within minutes, the digital world lost balance. Clips from the interview ricocheted from one account to the next. Comment sections multiplied. People wrote long threads. A single question was everywhere: what will Elçin say? The phrase took on a life of its own, repeated over and over as fans debated in earnest and skeptics rolled their eyes. Some accused Barış of pulling the past into the present as a way to shake headlines. Others insisted he was brave to say something so vulnerable in an industry that rewards silence. And yet, amid the noise, one person remained very quiet. No comments. No captions. No sudden post to break the spell. For someone as warm with her followers as Elçin has always been, her silence felt like a presence of its own. Those close to her, speaking softly and carefully, suggested she was shaken. She had worked hard to lay that period of life to rest, to let it be a chapter that shaped her without having to relive it. Then, suddenly, one interview made that impossible. Turkish series Stars family, what would you do in a moment like this? Do some truths heal once they're spoken, or do they tear open delicate seams? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if you find value in these thoughtful deep dives, tap like and spread the word. This community grows because of you. Back on that couch under the studio lights, Barış continued, his voice steady but low. He admitted that every message, every glance, carried weight. He acknowledged the danger. Not danger in the tabloid sense, but the emotional kind that turns a stolen hour into a lifetime of what-ifs. He described the thrill, too, the feeling of two people finding something that didn't care about timing or labels. Love, he suggested, doesn't wait for approval. It arrives, stubborn and inconvenient, and refuses to be scheduled. It didn't feel like nostalgia. It sounded like unfinished business. The host, sensing the delicate line they were walking, leaned in and asked the question everyone held in their throat. Wasn't he worried this would make life harder for Elçin? The studio hushed with the weight of it. And here, Barış chose his words with the care of someone who knows that every syllable will be replayed 100 times. He said he blamed no one. That both of them carried complicated feelings. That he had never denied what he felt then. And that when he sees her now, the echo of it still returns with a stubborn clarity. Inside the studio, you could hear a breath stretch into silence. Outside, the internet lit up like a switchboard. Everyone had an opinion. Everyone had a theory. Everyone had a memory of their own hidden moment they wished they could either forget or relive. And what of the third presence in this story's long shadow, the businessman who, at that time, stood beside Elçin in public? He hasn't spoken, and perhaps he never will. But people in his circle whispered that he had always harbored quiet suspicions, the kind that drift in late at night and ask unwelcome questions. One friend allegedly said he sensed something but chose not to believe it, hoping that doubt would dissolve if ignored. Now, with the past spoken aloud, insiders claim the last flicker of reconciliation between him and Elçin may have been extinguished for good. On the surface he remains composed. Beneath, those who know him say the ground does not feel steady. According to people close to Barış, this wasn't a slip. It wasn't a moment of heat or a careless flourish for ratings. It was deliberate. After years of holding a half-told story, he decided to stop pretending it was lighter than it was. He reportedly told friends that certain truths become heavier the longer they hide. And in the studio, when he finally said that speaking his truth was its own kind of freedom, his eyes carried that mix of exhaustion and relief you recognize in someone who has been standing still in a storm for too long. For Elçin, that freedom wasn't free. She had been working to let the past be the past, focusing on scripts that stretched her range, on projects that demanded her full attention. She had reconsecrated herself to work and to a calm, grounded life. Friends say she felt her privacy had become a cost of someone else's closure. That the part of the story that belonged to her had been pulled back under the microscope without her consent. Whether that's fair or not depends on where you stand, but the ache of it is easy to imagine. Do you think closure is a myth when it comes to love? Or do old embers truly cool, only to flare up when the air shifts? Tell us in the comments, and remember, your likes and shares help Turkish series stars keep telling complicated human stories with care. Reactions remain split down the middle. Many applaud Barış for choosing vulnerability over armor, for saying out loud what most people go to great lengths to bury. Others insist he crossed a line, that some feelings aren't his alone to reveal. Journalists are circling. Not to exploit a wound, they say, but because the country's most watched duo. The pair that once caught lightning on screen and off, is back at the center of a question everyone wants answered. Insiders whisper that Elçin will speak, but on her terms, and not a minute sooner. One close friend, careful with each word, told a reporter that she is hurt, yes, but not broken, and when she responds, it will be with grace. And so, an entire media cycle pivots to a triangle composed of time, truth, and two people whose chemistry refuses to go quietly. Barış, Elçin, and the shadow of a relationship that framed the world's expectations back then. There is something disarmingly human about what's unfolding, no villains, only timing that didn't cooperate and feelings that overflowed the space allowed to them. Secrets, guilt, tenderness, longing, the ingredients of a story that doesn't fade once the credits roll. Perhaps that's why this moment landed like it did. It wasn't scandal for its own sake. It sounded like a confession from someone still haunted by what could have been. And in that honesty, a million people recognized their own half-finished chapters, the text threads deleted and then restored, the songs they skip because the first notes bring back too much, the intersections where two lives couldn't quite figure out how to become one. When reporters finally caught up to him the next day, Barış looked composed in the way a person looks after a sleepless night that ends in a long walk. The inevitable question reached him: did he regret saying what he said? He didn't decorate his answer. Sometimes, he replied, telling the truth is its own kind of freedom. He didn't add a footnote. He didn't explain a metaphor. He let the sentence stand and then stepped back from the circle of microphones, leaving behind a trail of open endings, and hearts that weren't sure if they'd been soothed or reopened. Where does that leave us? With eyes trained on one woman who has always known how to carry a room without raising her voice. Will Elçin remain silent, not as surrender, but as a choice, or will she write her own chapter with a statement that frames the past without letting it swallow the present? Her team is quiet. The people closest to her say a response may come, but not before the emotional dust settles and not before she's certain she can speak without harming anyone. Whatever she decides will shape how this story is remembered, as a final page or the prologue to something new. Until then, the tabloids glow like neon, and social feeds hum with analysis threaded through with nostalgia. Every hour brings a fresh theory and a counterpoint, a photo from years ago reinterpreted through the prism of confession. It's a tangled web, and it's also heartbreakingly simple. Two people loved in a moment that wasn't ready for them. Perhaps they are wiser now. Perhaps the window has closed. Perhaps this is exactly what it looks like, a man choosing honesty because the weight of silence became too heavy to lift. However it resolves, we'll remember the quiet courage of the studio moment, the hush that followed, the way a single sentence stretched time. We'll remember that truth, even when unwelcome, will find its voice. And we'll remember that behind every radiant photo and effortless laugh is a private map of choices, some of which will never be fully understood by anyone outside the room where they were made. Turkish series stars family, we'll leave it here for tonight. Was Barış brave to speak, or did he open a door that should have stayed closed? Tell us what you think, because your voices shape this space. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap join if you want to support Turkish series stars as we continue to tell these human stories with care, curiosity, and heart. No matter how polished fame may look, truth has a way of slipping in, and when it does, it changes everything.